Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soulful Abundance Festival. I'm Elise Preston, and I'm your host. And today, I'm so excited to be here with creative and storyteller Marj Ostani. Welcome, Marj.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And so just to share a brief introduction to Marj and her work, Marj Ostani is a self-developing creative and storyteller producing feminist-centric works in BIPOC communities. Marj is on a mission to build a community of artists centering people of color, women of color, queer and non-binary folks, supporting changemakers, businesses, lightworkers, brands, and visionaries through holistic, sustainable, and conscious self-expression. They aim to increase representation for artists and creatives of non-dominant identities and expand stories around Asian identity. Marj is the founder, writer, and producer based in the Manila, Philippines. So welcome. So excited to be able to dive into our conversation today and also share a bit about the ways in which we've been able to deepen our connection and support each other in expanding our work. And so shared more of your formal bio, but would love to hear a bit in your own words about your own story of healing and how you found your way to the creative work that you're doing in the world today.
That was a bit of a download and it's really nice to also be in this space. Like, we kind of work together. So yeah, like doing this, I'm really happy. But coming back to your question, it's been quite a journey. I really started off, so I'm here from the Philippines and, right off the bat, I finished college. I am a communication arts graduate and majored in film. So right after that, my only day job, actually, like it's been 5 years now since, I've been working and since I finished college, but I've only had one day job, and that is being a post producer at a production company here for TV. And I was like there for maybe a year, like a year. And so I was doing like the whole, not even 9 to 5 like job, just because like the TV industry is is a lot. So I was doing like commercials and all these things and doing a lot of shoots. Like I would not even go home. Like they would be like, a couple of days we will shoot on production mode, and that's like, like there's no sleep on that. And being like, the producer, you have to overlook everything, artists, production crew, like the artists, like literally even the food that everyone will eat, like calling everyone, everything started anyway. So it was good. It was a good learning ground for me. But after that, I was just burnt out. Like it really went to a point that I was not taking a shower. Like really though, like after our shoot, we go back to the studio, and then it's like post-production, like editing. And I was like back and forth with clients with like revisions and like really hustling to like the airing time of whatever commercial that is, whatever show that is. And I really just like hit that point where I was, I this is like so funny. I always tell people this because the turning point for me was, this was like I was handling this project, and it was a huge project, and like I was not going home, barely taking shower, and then I can't even eat properly. And so I think like I had this like little time to just like get a coffee or whatever. So I went down, and while I was like in the elevator, like there's like a mirror like all over you, right? I looked at myself literally, and then I was like, I need to go. Like I looked at myself like looking so stressed out. And I haven't, and I was like, I had that realization that I was like, I need to go. And right after that, I got whatever I got in my big coffee. I got back in the office and filed my resignation. It was like, like when people like ask me, how did you know, like how did you just like leave? I didn't know. I was in that elevator, saw myself, wasn't looking good, wasn't the best. I was like, what happened? I was like, I need to go. So it was that quick. And right after that, like that's the first year of my career, and the rest of the 4 years was really figuring out, you know, like this whole self-developing creative journey for me. And what happened is, after being a post-producer, I actually moved to Singapore. And, you know, like, because I just know that I'm going to do work, like, you know, that is in the arts industry or creative, you know, something to do with media and entertainment. Because like, it's something that I'm passionate about, whatever medium it is, might be TV and music and all these things, writing. I just didn't know where. So I was trying, you know, like, which department I can be. And the reason that I wanted to move to Singapore is like that thinking, you know, I'm from a third world country, and it's like, you know what, like, I don't think I can thrive as a creative here. You know, like, I was like seeing a lot of creatives here, and yeah, like, their work is like on agencies and production houses, and it was like that culture that I saw, and it just was not a right fit for me. I guess, like, you know, like, I could put it that way. I love the work, you know, I love the hustle. I'm actually good at it, but I just don't think I can express myself, because it was a lot of just like clients, right? It was a lot of just, yeah, like, it's just their direction. So there was no space for me to express myself. Yeah, and then went to Singapore. What I even got there was like an internship for like a perfume company. It wasn't even like, you know, creative work. But, you know, I was like thinking, yeah, I should try. But honestly, like, I think it made sense that I made the move, because that's where a magazine found me. And this is really the huge shift that happened in my career. A feminist-centric magazine from Korea found my work. So when I was still like, you know, writing for music publications, because I love going to concerts, and after college, I didn't have the money for it. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write for publications and get free tickets. Yeah, they found my portfolio in that, and they wanted me to basically be the culture editor for Southeast Asia. And I was like, yeah, like, sure. And it was a remote work, and, you know, like, it was like best of both worlds. I could stay longer traveling around Asia. First time I was earning dollars, and it was remote work, and I was writing for a living. And that was like really a turning point, because because it was like, oh, this is happening. You know, like, I grew up, a lot of people saying there's no money in writing, or literally any other, like, you know, if you're an art student, they're like, okay, but what are you gonna do? Like, there's no money there. And then there it was, you know, like, I was in Singapore. I was flying back to the Philippines, to Malaysia, Indonesia, all these, you know, countries for work. I was covering travel stories. I was doing interviews with folks all over the world, and musicians and celebrities. I was getting, you know, all these gigs, and I get paid. And then I was like, oh, okay, like, this, you know, this is great. And it's not that, you know, like, while I also bask in, you know, all these experiencing these new things, a lot of fulfillment really came from the work that I was doing too, because it was the first time that I worked at something that kind of like, well, not kind of, but like, had a purpose, right? You know, when I was doing this shows back in the Philippines, it was just like very, you know, like, corporate, and just like, you know, we just do commercials, whatever, these and that. I know, like, there's concepts there and all, but like, for this one, there was literally, like, you know, a goal to lift Asian women, and, you know, like, their stories and narratives. This is also you know, an eye-opener for me to be more, what they say, woke. You know, like, I myself, and then like, it was like a huge learning experience, because I wasn't really, you know, like, focused in like knowing a lot about my roots, or like my community, or my people. And, you know, and it was like, I was blindsided to that, because in my head, it was just like, I need to make money. And then I was thrown to that work, and I got to know all these stories, all these amazing people, and, you know, their successes and struggles. And I was like, okay, you know, like, there's something shifted in me. And from there, is, the rest of the history is basically I had to move back here in the Philippines because the magazine didn't last long. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now when, I didn't have a job anymore? And I thought coming back here, I really made an intention, and I told myself, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this on my own, because experiencing working on my own, doing remote work, having that time to myself, having that agency as well, and having a space where I can also express myself, and also doing work that I know is helping and supporting people, really, like weighed more than what people are saying. You need to go back and find a day job because that's where consistent money is. Like even my, like my previous, my former boss from that company that I used to work with back here even offered, like double my salary when I went back, and we even had a meeting, and it was, it was all, all tempting. But I was like, okay, but will I really, enjoy that or stick to that? Because I don't want to go back and be like, 1 year again and I'm out. I don't want to do that to them. So and 3 years later, 3 years is really, like the timeline that it was like literally just on my own. A lot has happened. And I wasn't just a writer, I was a producer, as like project manager and coordinator, social media manager, and all these things like kind of just like expanded. And right now I'm in a place where kind of like making things more legit, I guess, because there's like so much expansion already that has happened. So I am, launching my own creative studio, and I'm really excited. Like it's been a journey. So, and I'm excited on what's gonna come out of this, like studio thing that I'm envisioning for myself.
Yes. And I really appreciate you sharing your story, because there's so much here that's so powerful and can be so expansive for others who are in a space of wanting to pursue a creative career, but not really sure how to go about that. And it's just beautiful, like being able to listen to your story and hear all the powerful ways that you were really tuned in with your intuition and were following those nudges and those aspects of the ways in which your body and your soul were communicating with you about like what was right for you, what was really calling you, how you wanted to be able to work in a way where you were really more connected to work that had a purpose. And that you were able to make these really important shifts and decisions and be discerning about creating the kind of work-life experience that you wanted to have. And I think it is so common, like so many of us who want to pursue more creative careers receive so much pressure from the outside world saying things like, oh, there's no money in writing, or how are you going to make that sustainable, right? And in some ways, that's people just wanting to keep us safe and provide us with guidance that they think is going to be supportive. But ultimately, we have the ability to tap into opportunities and experiences where there's money, where things are sustainable. We just need that ability to trust ourselves and root into the truth that there are so many expansive possibilities that are available. And I think it was also really great to hear towards the end of this story that you were talking about your previous employer, tempting you, right, with even more money, but you still were able to root into that trust and that knowing of like, actually, no, working for myself is what's going to be more supportive and more correct for me. And yes, I just really appreciate you breaking that down and sharing your journey and sharing your story, because I do feel like it can be supportive for so many. And so, you mentioned that you are in the process of launching your own creative studio, and was wondering if you could share a little kind of sneak peek inside your current process and what it is that you are really working towards launching.
So it's still like actually a question that I, like I ask myself throughout the process. Like, so for the past 3 years, when I said earlier that it was really the time that I literally like work on my own. And this was, the time, like the first year, I remember I continued writing. I continued doing, like bylines for different publication. I was like pitching all over the place, getting, like rejected too. And then like maybe there's one or two who will accept my pitch. And I was doing that for a year. And like it did solidify my portfolio. And I just like wanted to also like mention that throughout this process, I guess like a huge learning, like something that I really learned is that it's, as a creative, it's okay to change your mind. Like, like, because a lot of us, it's just like, oh, I'm just like a writer, or I'm just like a producer, or I'm this, and I should just like be, great at that craft. And that, like, that's it for me. But that wasn't the case for me. Like, I was like dabbling in all of these things, and it took me a while to kind of sit down and really come into terms with that, like you're allowed to change your mind and expand and, like try different things and see what really will light you up. And so for after actually a year of writing on my own and doing all these things, I hit again another, like, I needed a break. And it was a lot, because I think I've shared this to you, but it was great work to write and make space, for our people, for our community. But nobody really tells you that, I guess, like, I'm speaking from a creative point of view, that even work is like, our careers is a lot of inner work. Nobody like really tells you that. Like, they just like tell you, in school, that you just need to be good at what you're doing. Like, you need to be skilled, even in resumes, right? Like, if they ask for your like resume, like, what is your all these like experiences you've had and stuff, but nobody really tells you that behind that, even like experiences, like the challenges you've had in your childhood or your family that is not even related to your work will actually affect how you work. So, like, as a self-developing creative, it's really a lot of inner work. And so, with this whole studio coming, to like life, I guess I had to take a break after that year of just like, I was in a very, I was just like not in a good space. There were personal things that I was trying to fix, and it didn't feel right for me to continue doing such work that carries a lot of empowerment when I wasn't feeling empowered myself. It felt like kind of like a clown. Like, I was like, oh, am I a clown here? Like, and I was doing a lot of that work that puts people's stories into light. But I realized after doing this work for years, I wasn't doing that. Like, nobody really knows what my story is, or like, they probably just like know and assuming that this is just me. And it was hard to be, I guess, like authentic to what you're doing when there's so much of that gaps between yourself and your community and like the people that looks at your work. So I had to take a break, and this is really when the expansion happened as well, because I really like had to reflect on myself. And I was like, and that this is when I dabbled into social media management, project coordination. I started editing, so not writing anymore, but more editing. And I was editing books, like poetry books, like these things came into play. And at one point, like it came to a point that it was getting stable, like the clients and the projects. And at this point, I wasn't emailing, just the whole day, like 50 plus people, reaching out. But like, people would refer me, to their friends and all these things. And that's when I saw the shift, right? Like, I was like, oh, okay, like this is getting stable now. And I just wanted to also point out that it's not just because of hard work. So, just so like people know, like a lot of these things come about not just because of hard work. People always tell you, you just like need to stick it out and, you know, like do hard work, whatever, because they think if you're like that productive and you have so much on your plate and you're doing everything, you're successful and you're doing the right thing. But for me, before I got there, like I had to pause a lot. I had to like accept a lot of like rejections. I have to shift my directions and like really, yeah, like this happens in the background. It's not just like, how did you make it? And, you know, you're just like, oh, just because of hard work and all these things. Yes, but also a lot of inner work. I think it's important to I know like I'm speaking a lot of, you know, like I'm putting light on all these things because for me, there's already so much space and in stories where creatives talks a lot about their hard work, you know, where they talk a lot about how they hone their skills. And, you know, there's only a lot of creatives talking about that. And I think, you know, like a lot of people have access to that already, but I don't think, you know, a lot have spoken about their journey, whereas it's attached to their inner work. And I'm like really passionate about it because I'm an example of that. Like that was what my journey is. A lot of my, I guess, success now really roots from how I worked to better myself, how I worked on knowing what my value and worth is. I remember taking so much projects before that was not sustainable. You know, it wasn't even paying me, you know, like the right amount, I guess, that I feel good about myself. But because I had this notion in my head that you just need to take it, you know, like as long as you have these works, you can thrive. But, you know, it was not the right thing to do. And as soon as I spoke and presented myself the way that, you know, like I know my worth, I value my work. This is, you know, what I'm laying it all out to people. Like that's actually when people also started believing in me. And like, you know, like I raised my rate and all these things, whatever, and everything just like started coming in. And so when I got to that stable place and, you know, a lot of things are happening, a lot of things are kind of coming into life, I said, I've always had a dream of having like a collective. You know, there's this questions that people say, oh, like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like how do you see yourself? For some reason I was so attached to this picture that, you know, like as an artist, you know, like I wake up whatever and then like I go to my own studio and we have like a photo, you know, I go to like I check like a photo shoot that we're doing, and then after that, you know, and everyone's like, you know, just checking everyone's doing their work, I'll go to like other meetings for like some other more projects, and like there's just like a bunch of creatives and artists in one room. And yeah, so and I thought, oh, like I can make that happen at this point. And yeah, so that's kind of like, you know, where the idea of the studio, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it, right? While I don't have, you know, like an office proper studio yet right now, what I have right now is a good community of artists and creatives and writers and, you know, educators. And I also have a lot of ideas and like projects, you know, that is, you know, like, you know, comes into me. And yeah, and I'm just gonna like, yeah, like legit like launch, you know, Marj Ostani Studio. Like not really think so much about the name or, you know, like the, you know, like even like proper studio you have, like, because people would be like, oh, okay, like, you know, again, like all those you know, like ideas and notions that if you have a creative studio, it should look like this or it should look like this. Like I even like I already like ran past through that, right? Because a lot of studios that I know, they're like art studios, and you know, like for, I guess, for painters and graphics artists. But like for me, how I envision it is just like this house and, you know, like this space where I could even like, you know, hold like yoga like classes there or whatever, you know, like all these things. Is just like there's so much that you can do if you have a space with creatives and artists and storytellers, and just, the ideas comes into my head. Sometimes, I cannot stop them. I'm just like doing it all together. It excites me. So I've been doing this work for the past 5 years on my own. So I think it's about time to like have people come along with my journey. That's the studio story.
Beautiful. And I really think it is so expansive and so exciting to be able to really breathe life into that vision. And as you shared, we get to like start where we are with what we have and starting from that abundance mindset. So I love that you talked about, I have a beautiful community of artists around me. I have a lot of ideas. I have the passion for this work. I've been doing this work for 5 years. Let's jump in and get started. I don't have to put any types of barriers or limitations or expectations around what I need to do in order to begin. Like, you get to begin. And I think it is so important, the way that you talked about your journey of inner work being so instrumental to your growth and your evolution as a creative. And that often isn't necessarily as highlighted or talked about in depth in the same way that hard work is. And so I appreciate, like, you were using the words of having to take those moments for pausing, for redirecting, for doing the inner work, and not just like continuing to force and grind and push in one direction. You actually gave yourself to that space to feel in what is working, what isn't working, what kind of trauma is coming up in me, what do I need to address, what do I need to figure out so this can be sustainable, and so that you can feel authentic in what you're doing. And love that turning point there where you talked about like really being able to plug into your own worth and your own value, and how that was what was really a huge game changer on your end. And I would say from my own experience as an entrepreneur, that was like such a huge shift for me too, and so relate to that experience of undercharging and overgiving and overworking, and how in our minds we might think like, oh, I have to say yes to all these different opportunities, and I have to make myself available for all these different things. And that's how I'm going to be able to grow my audience or expand or have consistent clients. But in actuality, if we are overgiving, depleting of our resources, that prevents us from being able to have the energy to show up in the most powerful and impactful ways. And it doesn't allow us to be sustained or inspired or lit up in the work that we're doing. So I so appreciate you bringing some of those elements to the light in your own story. And, as we're talking about this piece of like knowing your value and tapping into your self-worth, would also love to hear a bit about how your relationship with vulnerability and showing up and being seen, how that has did over your time in this work.
Yeah. Funny, not funny. I've been doing this work for 5 years, but it's only this year, the 5th year, that I'm actually coming out in public, like more of like telling my story, even doing this, like speaking engagement. I was like, it was like, yeah, it's only this year that I'm starting to like really put out more of my voice and my narrative. I did have some personal essays before, but it wasn't, something that was really like speaking a lot about. So I think my relationship, with vulnerability comes hand in hand with the inner work that I've done, like comes hand in hand with the healing journey that I've been going through for the course of 5 years. And it really took me to places that I was not seen and heard, for me to come out, for me to address, like this, challenge and difficulties that I've been having. I thought before, with social media or the work that I do, or even my relationships with people, I thought I was like the most authentic I could be, or, people knows me like fully already. But it was a lot of also persona. that I was carrying, throughout my school years until how I work and all these things. I've always like been perceived, or, I've always had that persona of like having things all together and, like really just like doing great at your job. And so I had to live by that, I thought, because again, that's what society tells you, and like external forces like impacts you. And then so like I said, it really brought me to places that I was not seen and heard, for me to come to realization that I actually need to speak my story and I actually need to be seen. And before I get to do that, I had to leave situations first. And it's not an easy thing to do, right? It's again, it's a different story, but it really affects you in every way. And so now that I'm out, of these situations and spaces, I told myself that I'm not going to live that way anymore. I got to that point. I'm just like, this is exhausting. Like, I'm exhausted, to put up with this. Like, yes, I am patient. I'm a hard worker. I am, I can be, a mothering type, what people would say, and just like caretaker and all these, but I was just exhausted again, right? Like it was like this, I feel like all of my, turning point, like really pushes me to to my limit. Even like that time that I resigned, I was in an elevator. I was like at my limit. I was like, I'm exhausted. Like, is this thing too, I'm exhausted. I don't want to live this way anymore. And I think I've mentioned to you the first time that we even connected how I was doing all these healing, creative work, but not much of it is out in my social media. Not that it's important, but I just feel called to be able to share that, because that's only, one of the massive way we can share at this point. We're in the middle of a pandemic, right? My relationship with vulnerability started from sharing other stories, other people's stories, lifting other people's stories, to like seeing how that is impactful and applying that to myself. I needed to do that work for me to also understand and know how it is important to tell my story. And now I'm doing it, and now it's been a while, but I've come into a place that I can hop into this interview and just like talk about my journey and not worry so much about, before I would worry about what, like, I don't even deserve that, or, I don't deserve a place in that, or like, what am I even gonna like talk about? I'm not successful as society would deem me to be, or like other people would, perceive success, but because I have been, through a quiet, a few situations already, and I've reflected on these things, and it's like, well, you just really got to do what lights you up and what feels good to you. And if it's a lot about finding community too. I realized that my relationship with vulnerability and being able to express the dualities and all these changes that happen and expansion that happened within myself, also, community is very important, because like I said before, the reason that maybe I was not, authentic and true and, as vulnerable as I can be, with people in my relationships and with myself, is because I was not in the right space and right community. These are they have their own healing journey too, but I need to get out of there. And once I found the like-minded people, the same people who were working towards the same things, have the same values, that's when things started to click. And I love how I can just be just like so open with these things. I love how I can speak the same vocabulary. I love how I can speak about creative work attached to healing work and not feel weird about it, because you get it, like they get it. And it's like, and it's just so there's no pretension anymore. So I really, like love that.
Yes. Oh, I so appreciate that you brought up that piece around community, because I think that is just, plays such a huge role in how we are able to be supported and to show up in our lives. And even from more of a quantifiable level, we do pick up so much from the people that we spend time around. I think it was a researcher at Harvard talked about the fact that like the 8 people that we spend the most time around in our lives are the most powerful conditioning influences around our life outcomes and our trajectory. And so the spaces that we spend a lot of time in, the people that we spend a lot of time around, that's not something that we should take lightly. That actually just has a huge influence over the course and the trajectory of our lives. And so I love how you talked about the ways in which being connected with like-minded community, being able to be in that like beautiful, open, vulnerable space of being comfortable expressing those aspects of your creativity and also your healing work and your spirituality was so nourishing for you. And that you did that level of introspective work to figure out like, ooh, maybe these aren't the places for me. Where can I seek out and find the places that are for me? So shifting gears a bit, wanted to have an opportunity to talk about our work together. And it's been so amazing to have your support as a content lead and program coordinator over the past couple of months. And something that has also been really, really fun about our work together is that we've had an opportunity to do some energetic exchanges and share our gifts with each other. And one of the ways that we've been doing that is through me being able to offer some human design mentorship to you, and wanted to see if you could share a bit about some of the ways in which our recent work around human design has been supportive or helpful in your work in the world.
Yeah. First of all, I am like just glad that I was connected to you. Like it was this like new world of human design. I'm like literally someone, from like astrology and, like personality types. Like I'm just like that person. When I see a new one, I'm like, I'll take that test and like see, like aware of, like what my personality is or like, science. And so, like getting to know and learning about human design, I was like really interested and like knowing more about it and just like how, like how our designs really impacts our life too. And so, actually we'll have our last session soon, but I've, like it just made sense to me. Like I think I've shared this to you already, that I'm someone who functions with I guess like logic way more for like most parts of my life, most years of my life. And for me, when I don't understand something, I need like a proper answer. Like I'm someone like that. I mean, I don't like abstract, or I don't like when people say like it just happens, or it's just because of this and that. Like I don't take that as an answer. I'm like, there must be a scientific, like a formula or like calculated thing that happened, why this occurred. And when I got introduced to human design, and it's basically each of our design, how we are, like as people, how we navigate and see things and perceive things. And for me, learning that I'm a manifesting generator, and it's like, literally it's like a hybrid of all these things. I guess like short answer, the human designer really helped grounded me more and like helped me in embracing like the not even just dualities, like all of these things that is me. And and I also it helped me come into terms too that sometimes like actually you don't get a proper answer. So it helped me tone down that voice of really wanting like a definite answer, or like that. And then learning that like with my design and with like others people's design too, like it just doesn't work that way all the time. And I mentioned this in a lot of our sessions, that learning with, you know, the dualities of, I remember the numbers that came up for me was like there's this like side that is more of like have agency and power, and then like there's this part that is more fluid and flexible and playful and spontaneous. And I remember you mentioning that the other one is actually more present for me, and I was like, oh, that is weird, because for the last 24 years of my life I was on the other side of the coin. And it wasn't really until this year that I am I'm not denying, you know, like that part of myself anymore. You know, like I've kind of hid that for for a while. And so now I get to discover her, I get to explore her, and then I don't get to question her anymore. Because for me before, I thought, and again, these are like limiting beliefs, you know, that they grew up on. And you know, before I again thought that, you know, we're just like in boxes. If you're going to be this, you're just going to be this. You cannot, like, you know, expand or explore. And and like for me, this part of myself are like really wants to come out, you know, the playful one, the one that just like, I guess, like the inner child, right? And yeah, human design really kind of just like solidify like all of these things for me, that I am not just you know, what people would say, maybe you're just like, you know, joining like the bandwagon, you know, like now everyone's about healing, now everyone's about like tending to their inner child. Or, you know, maybe this is just your you know, like trauma from your past relationships saying that you know, because, you know, when people like say like you're not fun or this and that, and then like now they see you have fun, right? People like attach you to that story, that like, oh, now you get to you know, you're trying that out because like somebody tells you like, no, like that was not, you know, the motivation. It might be some, you know, like parts of, you know, it might be in the part of a story that kind of pushes me, but it was a lot more of my relationship to myself. And human design made me understand that a little bit more, especially like to that, you know, the softer side. And just like, yeah, it's always been there, like you're actually designed but you know, like with, you know, studies, even backed up with studies and stuff, you're actually assigned to be like that, and to act like that, and to perceive things like that. And it was just a lot of external things that I grew up on, that I wasn't able to express that, or I was in denial of that even, and I abandoned those parts of myself. So now that I get to understand these things with a little bit more backup, like, you know, like when you have a thesis, right? Like you have references and all these things, and human design is, you know, like that is the thing for me that really is like, yeah, you know, like this makes sense. And so now I can navigate my life even better, honestly, though, like with the work and play thing, you know, now it's like I get to choose which ones I can be more authoritative. I can be more like, you know, like really like the structured person, and, you know, have the agency on things that I do. Now I can identify which parts of my life or which work requires that energy. And now I can also identify and be more fluid on like the rest of, you know, the things that I get to be more spontaneous and playful, and doesn't really need to be one way only, right? And it's a game changer, honestly. Like it makes everything flow smoothly for myself and for everyone around me as well.
Yes. And so there's so much that you shared here that is so impactful. And I love how you talked about being connected in with some of these different aspects of yourself. It allowed you to embrace your multidimensionality, to be able to really solidify and honor things about yourself that maybe in the past you may have denied or abandoned those parts or aspects, and has overall just helped you to be able to navigate life even better, as you said, and give yourself that affirmation and that validation around things that have always been innate in you, and things that are connected to how you're designed, right? That you may have not been able to plug into those things or have connection to them in the past. And so appreciate you sharing so openly about your process and your journey around this. And I am really, really excited to just be able to be connected with you, stay in relationship with you, and explore all of the beautiful ways that your connection with yourself is also going to radiate and ripple outward through the beautiful creative work that you're sharing with others. And so as we start to bring our conversation to a close, would love to ask you the question that I ask all of our guests, which is, what does soulful abundance mean to you?
A loaded question. But honestly though, as someone who's like worked with you literally with the summit and like the challenge this week, and like reading through a lot about soulful abundance, and I thought to myself, okay, like what does that really like mean to me personally? And what really like comes to mind is like the keywords would be honest and free. And what I mean by that is, for me, honesty is something that I really value for myself, for my relationships, like anything around me. I feel like if we can function or live our day-to-day life in all honesty, like seriously though, it's hard to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of factors, but the more that I practice that, the more that every day I wake up leaning towards my honest intentions, with literally everything, with what I eat, with what I do, with what I sent, like a message I sent, or with someone who I talk to. It doesn't mean that you have to think about that, like every action that you need, but like if you practice, just being intentional and being honest in your day-to-day basis, in your relationships, that's where I feel the most abundant, like the abundance like coming through me. And it's not because and I don't mean abundance in means of like money or like material things or opportunities or whatever, but more of like the abundance of how you can nurture everything around you. Like that feels abundant for me when I see how good my relationships are with my family, with my friends, with the people that I work with. When I see that, even the little things, like say like when I buy some, like an ice cream, say like from a street vendor, right? And you're just like, you just like express how excited you are for what they're doing. It's like this ripple and dominant effect, right? And then like you see how they exchange that energy with you too. And then like for me, that's like, I don't know, like I feel happy and I feel abundant when I see people that way, because I've also learned it the hard way myself. Before I was like, why am I always miserable? Why am I always sad? Why am I always angry? And I'm not to blame other people, but like you said, the 8 people, the first 8 people around you really affects how you live your life. And so, every day I wake up and, I try my best, again, like we have our ups and downs, but I try to think not just for what's best for myself, but like think how this, like would affect the people. And so I function, in a community basis, like mindset, because I just know how impactful that is for ourselves and for others. And so for me, soulful abundance really is about like living in the most honest way that you are, because I feel like the more honest you are to yourself and everything that you do, it just like brings you to freedom. It brings you to like that feeling of ease and relief, and just not carrying so much baggage or shame or burden, because there's nothing to carry, there's nothing to hide. It's just like all there. Well, unless unless like your intentions are not good, then that's where the struggle happens. But
Yes. Oh, this is beautiful. Living in the most honest way so that you can have the most freedom. And I love the way that you described your personal definition of abundance being really connected to how you can nurture everything around you. Oh, yeah, that feels so good. And so I know that our audience is going to be so excited about learning the ways that they can stay connected with you and would love if you could share that with us now.
Yeah, do you mean like where they can find me? Yeah, I'm
Where
only
they can find you.
really, yeah, like I'm already really accessible and visible on Instagram right now at this moment. So it's at Marj Ostani. That's actually my personal account. But if you go to my profile, there is a bunch of accounts there. So there is Marj Ostani Studio. You can, everyone can just like follow that right now. It hasn't, it doesn't have anything yet, but because the studio will be launching this June, so that's when things will start to pick up from there. So would appreciate if people can just like, follow that too and keep an eye on it. I also have an account called by Marj Ostani, and that account is more of my projects, like passion projects. So I have like my photography stuff there, and probably will do the podcast thing there. Yeah, so those are really like, three accounts that I am visible in. But yeah, like by June, hopefully my website will be up. They can find my podcast links all over this profile. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so, so much for joining in for the summit. I'm so appreciative of you sharing so openly about your own journey and your own story, and really inviting us in to your creative process and how you've grown and transformed over the past 5 years. And for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for our next set of interviews. Be well, everyone.